Hello, and welcome to Rough Edges. I'm your host, Sarah Fox. In this podcast, I will guide you through my faith and mental health journey to dispel the stigma surrounding mental illness and to create a voice for those who wish to discover more about these topics. This podcast will not only shed light on mental health issues, but will also reveal the intersection between faith and mental illness. I pray that these themes will bring growth and healing to our communities. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Rough Edges. I am joined by a very special guest who is a dear friend of mine, and she is also a role model for me in many ways. I have here with me Marilette Sanchez. So Marilette is a wife and a mother of 5 young kids first, but put some coffee and a pen in her hand, and she is unstoppable. She and her husband Moses work for the Christian nonprofit organization Crew, working alongside marriages and families. A New York City native, Marilette is known for her transparency and her ability to inject her love of pop culture into her discussions of relationships and marriage. Follow her parenting and homeschooling journey on Instagram at Big City Big Family, and her musings on womanhood and pop culture at MariletteSanchez.com and ThinkChristian.net. Welcome, Marilette. So happy to have you.
Thanks for having me. This is an honor.
Awesome. So I just wanted to talk about a little bit more about yourself and what kind of drives you to get out of bed in the morning.
I mean, you said it in my bio, coffee drives me to get out of bed. I look forward to that every morning. But I think of how I start my day. I like to spend some time worshiping the Lord through music. That really gets me out of bed in the morning. It's like, okay, I get to spend time with the Lord, my Savior, and it just centers me to do that. So as you can imagine, a life of being a mom of 5, it's chaotic. Like once that day starts and that first kid wakes up, so I like to wake up early and have that quiet time alone. And thankfully my husband Moses, he takes care of breakfast, so I can focus on that for the first chunk of my morning. So I also love to write what you read in the bio, so that also gives me life. I feel like it helps me process life, if that makes sense. I like to write as a way to just process what I'm going through and what I'm thinking about. So, and thankfully it also helps me connect with others through social media and things like that. So
awesome. So I usually do a segment called Highs and Lows for the week. So do you have any highs and lows for this past week?
Yeah, I mean, it was Thanksgiving week, right? So I got to spend that with my 2 sisters and our mentors who are in Virginia. So it was a really fun time with friends and family. And so that would definitely be my high. It was just a time to kind of recharge by doing that. A low, this is, I got to think about this one. Let me think about it.
If you don't have any lows, that's okay too.
Yeah, I can't think of anything right now, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's totally fine. So for me, it was Thanksgiving week, and I got to spend time with my family and eat lots of good food. So that was really amazing. And then for the lows, I'm not really sleeping well at night, so I need to get into a better sleeping pattern. But yeah, that's it for me. So you're a mother of 5 beautiful children. And so what are the most challenging and most rewarding aspects of motherhood for you?
Yeah, challenging is just the amount of energy that they drain from you. So my kids the oldest is 9, and then the next is 7, 6, 5, 2. Yeah, I got it. I got them all. So it's just high energy all the time. So I think the challenge is just having enough energy to entertain them throughout the whole day. Before it just you're I just need some time alone to recharge. But so that's the challenge, is and I think also like discipline is a challenge when you have so many different personalities. I feel like you kind of have to customize it for each kid, because the thing that worked for one kid is not going to work for another kid.
Right.
So that's the challenge. You're always shifting gears. But the rewarding thing is just watching them develop and like grow, and like seeing them like at our co-op we do presentations, so it's just teaching them public speaking at our homeschool co-op, because we homeschool, and just seeing them like go from like, okay, I'm shy and I'm not going to do anything, to like really like speaking to their friends, and like kind of answering questions that their classmates have, just little things like that, where you get to see them grow into their own. So yeah, it's also fun to do this with my best friend and partner, Moses. Like, to have a partner to do that with is definitely so helpful, and I
Yeah.
could not do it alone. So,
Yeah, that is definitely one of the most rewarding aspects of motherhood, just to see like, your kids grow and then to see their personalities come out in so many different ways.
exactly.
It's
Yep.
just so beautiful.
When they say something funny and you're like, that really came out of their mouths, like, like a little old person. So, yeah, like even with my 2-year-old, she'll say these phrases, and I'm just like, how do you even know that? Like, how do you know to put a sentence together like that? But
Right. That
so it's
is
fun.
awesome. Yeah, so how did you and Moses really get into ministry? Was it always something that you've wanted to do, or was it something that came along the way?
Yeah, so we met in college. We were both doing high school ministry, just volunteering. Well, he was an intern, I was a volunteer, and he's 2 years ahead of me. So he had been doing it for a little bit longer than I had. But that's how we met, actually, and how we became friends and eventually started dating. But I think for me, I saw ministry as just like an extra thing that you do. Like, I compartmentalized career and ministry. So I
Mm,
never would have thought I'd be doing this as like a vocational ministry where you do it full time. But when we were engaged, they really wanted the higher ups within crew. They really encouraged us to do it as a couple, because it wasn't just a regular 9 to 5. Like, you're mentoring like on the weekends and doing Bible studies like in the off hours, like in the evenings or in the afternoons, and you just can't. Yeah, I forgot my train of thought, but like they wanted you to do it together as a couple.
right.
So yeah, when you get married, do it as a couple. So I think the rules have changed a bit now. They've kind of relaxed on those rules, but in that time, it was like, it was really, I wrestled with that. It was like, I don't know if I want to do this like full time. Like, I had my own dreams to write. I wanted to be an entertainment journalist, like maybe write for like People magazine or like Rolling Stone. Like, I really wanted to do that. So it was like a sacrifice for me to come on staff, and it really was like it was like obedience. Like, I knew the Lord was calling me to do it, even though it was a risk. But I haven't had any regrets since we've done it. Like, I feel like it is my heart and soul to mentor and to pour into others. So I really love doing it. And I've been able to write as well. Like, through my blog, I've been able to do that through freelancing. So I feel like I've come full circle of like, I get to do a lot of things that I love to do, while, because I'm on staff and there's a flexibility there, as well as being a mom. Like, I feel like sometimes with a journalist's schedule, like it would be tough to be a mom because you're so busy.
Right.
But with crew, like there's a lot of flexibility to our schedule. So I get to homeschool and yeah, just raise our kids, get to stay at home for most of the time. And, I can still do stuff outside of the home, but for the bulk of my time, I'm allowed to just be home with the kids, which I'm really grateful for.
Yeah, it's interesting how you kind of get the best of both worlds, where you still have part of like your original dream where you wanted to write, and then you also have motherhood and ministry. So you kind of have like a good, well-rounded like
Yeah,
areas that you
it
do.
took years to get to that sweet spot, but I feel like I'm in a good
Yeah,
spot now. Yeah.
awesome. So, Like, tell me a little bit more about your blog. Like, I'm an avid reader. Like, I love it. So, for those people who don't know, like, what inspired you to create it, and what goals do you have for its future growth?
Yeah, so I just wanted a space where I could talk about my love of pop culture. Like I love movies and music and
Same.
just yeah, pop culture is my jam. So yeah, I just wanted it was just for me to like have an outlet. That's how I started it. I wasn't thinking like I didn't have any huge plans for it like let me have like 1 million followers or whatever it is. Like I just wanted an outlet. And so, yeah, and a place to like, I was in the I feel like when I started it, or at least like really started taking it seriously, was when I was a new mom, and I was just like, I can't do the change diapers all day. Like that's just not me. Like I need something to
Right.
like intellectually stimulate me. Like, and so that's why I started writing. And also like I was doing youth ministry at the time, and so it was just a way for me to like comment on the latest movie that's out or the latest pop music that's out and be like, oh, if you want to know my thoughts about it, just read my blog and I'll just pass it on to the youth that I was reaching out to. So that was kind of why I wanted to start it, was just an outlet for me. Like it was fun. And also just for a way to, it's another way to do youth ministry. That's kind of how I started. And so it's just grown. I feel like if you just stay consistent at it, I feel like things tend to grow. Like you tend to attract people that kind of track with you. So yeah, like over the years, just staying consistent has helped me build up a following on there. And yeah, and then I don't know if you want to talk about this, but when I feel like I really like blew up was when I wrote about Wonder Woman from like a Christian
Yes.
perspective, and then that was like really fun to see that all these strangers like commenting and things, but it was also really tough because it was the first time I got like the real trolls and the haters, and
Uh,
it was really it was a yeah, roller coaster ride for me. But that's when I knew like I'm doing something like bigger here. Like this is not just the people that I know. Like this
yep.
is expanding beyond the people that I know. So that was an interesting time time of growth for me. So
Yeah, talk a little bit more about the Wonder Woman article. I mean, like, what was the process in you writing that? Like, did you have any, like, nervousness as you were publishing it? Like, did you not know what the response was going to be? Like,
yeah,
how was that?
yeah, of all the things I've written, I was not thinking that that would be controversial. I was just writing about how
Right.
women are meant to be more than just sidekicks and we have a bigger purpose to us. And so I'm like, I wasn't thinking that people were going to argue against this, but there's just a whole crowd out there that wants to keep women down and like
Mm-hmm.
have very old fashioned views of what a woman looks like. And so yeah, I was not expecting anything. I literally was just like, I want to write about this movie. This movie made me cry, and I need to write about this movie. So, yeah, I was not expecting any of the backlash.
Yeah. Honestly, that article was one of many that actually changed my life. And it's even interesting how we met. Like, we met
Mhm.
through your blog. Like, when I was in high school, I was like,
That is
I want to
true.
start my own blog too. So it's kind of just amazing how, your blog has definitely touched my life and it has touched many other lives as well. So,
Thank
yeah.
you. Thanks for saying that. I forget that that was kind of our early connection was
Yeah.
through that.
Yeah, so so we're gonna switch gears a little bit. Can you tell me about your mental health journey?
Yeah, I was in the hospital for 10 days, but I had my first manic episode. And I think what caused that, like what my psychiatrist said caused that, was acute stress. And I, I just think back to that time. It was the middle of a pandemic. There was all this racial trauma going on, and my dad was sick. He's since passed away, but he was sick with a bone marrow disorder. And so this is the prime of the pandemic, and I'm just like worried about his health,
Right.
with COVID and everything. And so there was ministry, which I feel like everybody was going through a stressful time. So here I am trying to minister to people and like taking on all their burdens and like not, yeah, just doing a really poor job at self care at that time. Like unloading on unloading with people that I trust and, um, you know, even now I think back of like diet and exercise probably would have helped me like de-stress. Like only looking back do I see like how that affects you so much. And so yeah, that was just a really scary time when I went through that. I was, like I said, I was at the hospital for 10 days. My husband and we had to send our kids off to some church friend's house, so that
Mm.
Moses could come visit me at the hospital every day. So I didn't see my kids for 10 days, which was probably the toughest part of that. Was like, it's not
Mm.
like they can go visit you at the hospital, and in the middle of the pandemic, you only get like one
Right.
visitor. So it was a tough time, and so, but that was the beginning of my like realizing like, wow, I don't take care of my mental health at all. Like I just,
Mm.
as a minister, like I just take on everything from other people, and I don't know how to, yeah, just de-stress from it all. And so, yeah, that has started my journey to want to help educate other people about mental health, and to just continue to prioritize my own mental health, my own like self-care journey. So yeah, any follow-up questions? I feel like just
Yeah. I don't know if you mind talking about this, but what was your diagnosis?
yeah, it was a bipolar 1 disorder.
Yeah, I have the same one actually.
Okay.
And so the reason why I wanted to start something like this is because, as you said before, it's like we don't prioritize mental health. And it's like a lot of the times we think that we can take on a whole bunch of things and just be strong, especially as women. It's like we
Mhm.
have that added pressure of like, I have to be strong for my family, for my friends, and not really focus on the fact that we do need to de-stress and we need to decompress, especially after traumatic experiences.
Mhm.
So, like, can you tell me about your experience with bipolar disorder, like with mania or depression or anything like that?
Yeah, I don't think I've had much depression. So it's actually not you don't have to have depression to have bipolar 1. You really only need mania. And so, like, I knew nothing about mania when that happened to me. So, as you can imagine, like, I'm just like, I mean, my husband is like, what's going on? Like, this is
Yeah.
not, something's not right. And so, yeah, for me, my mania was just like, the first couple days was just insomnia. Like, literally, I could go of like a 2-hour nap. Like I
Mm.
could, and I had high energy. Like I was not like, oh, groggy because I didn't sleep. No, I was like top of the world, like on
Yeah.
cloud nine. And so I had insomnia for 6 days before I went to the hospital.
Mm.
And then, yeah, I just remember feeling like invincible. Like I read about it now, and I realize it's normal for, someone with bipolar disorder to feel that way. But yeah, when you're going through mania, you're just like, I just want to be here forever. Like
Yeah,
feels
exactly.
so good. Like you're like, oh, I've never been happier. Like, yeah. But then I started like, I don't remember everything that I was saying, but I started to just not make sense. Like they called
Yeah.
it, that part of my diagnosis was also psychosis, where you break with reality. Like you're not in touch with reality anymore. So I was just saying crazy things to Moses, and yeah, there was actually so people from my church were praying for me because we didn't know if it was just like something spiritual happening, because even
Right.
in the Philippines, stuff like that actually does happen, like things where you need an exorcism. Like
Mm.
my mom's pastor, like he has experience with that, and so he came over, was praying for me, and they prayed for me like all night before I went to the hospital. But it just like wasn't really helping, I don't think. Like, and there was a part during that night where I blacked out. Like I don't have a memory of it at all. Like
Mm.
everything else I can remember. Like everything else is like, it was almost an out of body experience, because you're like saying things that you're like, where did that come from? But
Right.
at the same time, you're still conscious that you're doing it. But there was like a part of that night that I just don't remember. And it's not like I went to sleep or anything. So,
Right.
yeah. So yeah, mania is, you could read up about it, but it is just an interesting experience. Like nothing can compare to it.
Yeah, as you were describing your manic episode, it just brought me back to like mine because it's just I had a little bit of psychosis too, And so it was just that break from reality, but like you said, you were conscious. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not like you didn't totally like feel out of it. It's just like you were there, but you just weren't making much sense, and that's because you had a disconnect. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, even for me, like Mania was just like high energy all the time. Like I also did a lot of goal setting, so I would set stuff for like 5 years into the future, and like I just wrote a whole bunch of stuff, a whole bunch of article ideas. Like it was just I just kept going and going and going, and it's just something that's an experience, and it's something that I'm a little bit afraid to experience again, because it's just something like, and I guess that goes with the stigma of everything. It's just like the shame that you feel afterwards, you
Yeah.
know. um so yeah, that's just it's just something very interesting to like think about and reflect on, that moment
Yeah.
in your life.
I'm glad like I have you to like process it with though, because like if I didn't have anybody, it would be different.
Yeah, that's true. That's so true.
I feel like I would feel that shame, that stigma even more. Like,
Yeah.
oh. But the fact that like you realize like you're just sick, like you don't. If somebody had a broken arm, you wouldn't blame them, and
Right.
you can feel guilty about it. Like you're like, okay, like let's get it fixed. You help them get it fixed. But when it comes to mental health, there's because of the stigma, there shouldn't be a shame attached to it, but there really is. And so, yeah, when I started thinking about it, like at first I was shameful about it, like all the things I said, all the things I did, like in front of all these people. Like there's no inhibitions when you're in mania, right? Like
Right.
it's like I don't care what people think. I feel good. But as I process it more, it's like, wait, like I can't blame myself for something that I did because I was sick.
Right.
So yeah, it took a while to get to that point, but yeah, like it's just to, to matter of factly see it as a sickness, like, and something like something that is wrong with your brain that needs some medicine to get back on track. So
Right. Right. Yeah, it's just like you said, it's like it's a chemical imbalance in the brain, And it's just like we should treat it just like we treat any other illness or any other injury, It's just an injury in the brain.
mm-hmm.
So, I don't get why it's so stigmatized. I think we're getting a little bit better at it, but there's still like the shame that's attached to it. But we'll talk more about that in a minute. I understand that you actually shared your mental health journey on your blog. You
Mm-hmm.
wrote two posts about it. One initially, and then one on the anniversary of the hospitalization. So, can you tell me what was it like to share your story and how you decided to do so?
Yeah, I think it was scary
Yeah.
because at that point only a few close friends knew about my diagnosis. Like I didn't tell everybody, so it was kind of scary. But as I like in the aftermath of it, there was a couple people that commented or messaged me and said like I'm dealing with something similar, maybe not bipolar, but maybe it was like anxiety or depression. And
Mm.
there was a couple that said they also have bipolar. But yeah, like they said they hadn't told anybody, and so like it was inspiring them to like want to tell people about their story. And so like I kind of that's kind of the reason why I even posted it. I think despite it being a scary thing was because I knew like it vulnerability breeds vulnerability. There's a saying that says that. So like as you share your story, other people are more inclined to share their story. So
Right.
that's kind of, and if I'm so serious about wanting to end the stigma, like this is a way to do it, right? Is to share my story for the people that don't have anybody that is going through a mental health crisis like in their life, and this is just a foreign concept to them. Like by me sharing my story, this is a way to get them close to somebody so they can like have compassion, they can have empathy, that this is not yeah, that this is just a normal part of life, to
Right.
go through something like this. And so that's kind of why I wanted to share, but it definitely was not easy. It was scary.
Yeah, I can imagine. Because honestly, you actually inspired me to want to do something like this because I mean, at least one of the inspirations for doing this, because I was also scared and like sharing, like, oh man, what are people gonna think about me? And I'm just like, with everything going on, like, I just graduated college and like future employers and stuff, will they go back and listen to this? Like, all these like fears that I had about sharing. And it's just like you said, it's just vulnerability breeds vulnerability. Like, you sharing your story can also create a pathway for someone to share their story as well. So that's something that's very beautiful to see. And it also helps you realize that you're not alone. You know, it's just like, you feel like initially you feel like, oh man, like this is such a big thing, like I don't know how I'm gonna get through this. But then it's just like you share it and then you find out, oh, that person also has it. Like, it's also really common. Like, you know, it's not as rare as we think it is sometimes. So yeah.
And I'm grateful for like Instagram. Like I feel like that's connected me to some people that like, as I'm more open, like using hashtags and stuff, it connects you to people who are like minded.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
So you kind of touched on this, but what were like the general responses to your article? Especially the one where it was like how mental illness brought me closer to God. Like, what were the general responses on that? And like, were you surprised, or like which ones impacted you the most?
Hmm. I think I only got positive reviews, so I feel like that was shocking to me. I feel I expected the worst, and so yeah, I feel like it was either people who were going through something themselves, and they were like, "Thank you for like giving me like, thank you for inspiring me to like want to share my story," or it was people who aren't necessarily going through anything, but they had a newfound perspective on it, and for people with mental health issues in general. And so at the same time, like I feel like my article also connected to people who are just suffering in general. Like it spoke to purpose and suffering. And so like I feel like I'm really passionate about that. Like I feel like American evangelical Christianity, like it's all about comfort, right? Like it's all about like
Mm-hmm.
everything's gonna go well for me, like God's gonna bless me. But sometimes like God's blessing comes in a funny package, like it comes through
Right.
suffering. And so like I feel like I've learned that well through pregnancy. Like this is a random aside, but like I feel like my pregnancies, like they're healthy, but you're just so like beaten down by pregnancy. Like you're
Oh,
tired all the time. You're like you're
yeah.
growing, and it's getting more and more uncomfortable as time goes on. And like I feel like I've written about this before on my blog as well, but like yeah, pregnancy is like one of the greatest teachers for suffering, and suffering
Mm.
is one of the ways that we really get dependent on God. And so yeah, I feel like that's been a theme on my blog as well. It's like, let's not expect life to be easy. Like life is going to always throw us curveballs, but
Right.
how do we lean into that? How do we lean into the Lord in that? And so I feel like it connected with people on that level. Like even if they weren't dealing with mental health issues, or um, if they didn't have someone in their life that had mental health issues as well. So yeah, it was really good reviews that were like very encouraging. So
Nice. I'm so happy that you've had positive reviews, because honestly, that makes all the difference too. Because it's just like, it goes back to that shame narrative where it's just like, okay, why am I doing this again? Like, why am I sharing my story? Like, and if you get negativity, it's just like, oh, you kind of like shrink back into yourself and you're just like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. But to see that your story has an impact on other people and the way that they live their lives as well, you know? And something you said about comfort and, you know, the expectation in Christianity that everything after you follow Christ is going to be a smooth sail. Like, there's going to be no issues, no problems. You're just going to have the joy of the Lord all the time. And that's just like not a good picture of Christianity, because even Christ suffered, you know? And so it's just to be able to have that hope, you know, that anchor, that, you know, that stability, to know that just because I'm suffering doesn't mean that this has to be the end, you know?
yeah, and God's not punishing me. I feel like is a big one. Like
Yeah.
he's here in it with me, and he allowed this. Like his sovereignty is something that I've learned through my mental health issues is like God is sovereign. Like nothing happens outside of His dominion and like his plan, and so like I can trust him that he's going to bring me out of this, and there's going to be a purpose behind this. And like that's another reason why I feel like I had peace, like though it was scary, I had peace sharing my story, because it's like God is still working on me, and he's going to figure out how this is going to get him the glory, and that's not my job to figure out why is this happening to me, like this is so, this is so horrible. Like you have those moments, right, where it's tough and you're like I can't go on, but yeah, like when you realize like, okay, God is sovereign, like it even helps with the shame stuff. It's like, oh, I messed up, like I said this during my mania or whatever, and you're like, well, God can redeem anything, so there's nothing to worry about. Like there's peace there.
Yeah. I just wanted to read an excerpt from how my mental illness brought me closer to God, because this is so powerful. It says, as this anniversary hits me, there are days when I am tempted to regret or feel shame. Why didn't I take better care of myself? Why didn't I reach out for support instead of taking on everything by myself? So, can you tell me more about that shame and how you dealt with it as you were telling your story?
The shame, yeah, I think I touched on it already, but yeah, there's a lot of regret, like as you, especially like when we talked about mania a lot, but like I can't believe I said that, like that was so horrible, or
Right.
like they, I don't think I mentioned this actually, but like they took me in the ambulance on a like a restrained chair kind of thing.
Yeah, the gurney.
Um, yeah, and so there, that's the word. But like I was getting aggressive with people. Like I was like flashing my arms or whatever you call it. And so, yeah, like that kind of stuff. I'm like, I can't believe I did that. Like that's so horrible. Like the people that I care about that were there for me, like I was like acting aggressive towards them, and so yeah, that was probably the bigger portion of the shame. Like I don't think just the diagnosis itself I necessarily felt shame about, because like I said, like it's a sickness, but like the
Mm,
things that I said and I did during mania, it took me a long time to get over that shame and be like,
yeah.
okay, like I guess like I can accept it. Like and it took me spending a lot of time in the word. I feel like that was a big one for me, like just washing over my brain with truth instead of the lies of the enemy that are, wanting us to keep us down in shame. I think just being or surrounding myself with really good people that like I can share like my struggles with, and them like not just just not shaming me for it, like them being the ones to be really encouraging about it, like, well, I'm so proud of you for getting help, I'm so proud of you for X, Y, and Z, like you're
Yeah.
a strong woman, like speaking life over me, like surrounding myself with those kinds of people, I think was really important, because this journey is not meant to be walked alone, and like I'm talking about everybody, like not just people with
Right.
mental health issues, but I think especially when you have a mental health issue, like you're even more like um, not, yeah, I would say some like dependent, like you kind of need other people to help you, because you have this um, condition, and so um, it takes a lot of humility, I think, to ask for help and to know that you need help. Um, but I'm grateful for this process. I feel like I've learned so much about myself through it. I feel like I've learned so much about like how to um, how to be a friend, how to accept help from friends as well. And so I don't know if that answered your question. How did I
No,
get over?
that was definitely
Yeah.
great.
Okay.
And just like how you were saying about community, because community is so important, especially in dealing with like mental health issues, because you are a little more vulnerable, you are a little bit more dependent on others, and it's just being strong enough to go out there and seek help, because a lot of the times we like to depict like therapy or therapeutic practices or anything that will help you get better, we like to view it as a weakness. It's like, oh, I don't want to be labeled as crazy. I don't want to
Yeah.
be labeled as, having a mental illness. But it's just like you go to the doctor for a cold, or just like you go to the emergency room if you broke your leg, like going to therapy is the same thing. So, what you said about community is really very important. And people need to realize that we need each other. We can't just go through this by ourselves. And you mentioned it earlier, like, you're glad you have somebody to process this with, because it is a process. And so many times we miss out on greater bonds that we can have with each other because we're so busy worrying about what other people think, or the labels, or even the stigma. So
Yeah.
that's just very important.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned therapy. I don't know how I forgot that. I definitely went to therapy, like, especially in the beginning. Like, they're more spaced out now because I feel like I've gotten more stable. But yeah, like, therapy helped me a lot because that even helped me get over, like, way past things, like, from childhood, like, that I
Yeah.
didn't know was still affecting me. So therapy works and therapy helps for sure.
Yeah, so as we get into our final question, do you have any like advice for anyone who's thinking about sharing their story or for their mental health journey in general?
Advice. I'm not an expert, so I feel like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm just sharing my own weaknesses and my own mistakes. Hopefully that helps people. But I think um, advice, I think we talked a lot about it, but like surround yourself with good people. Like, I think
Mm.
community really is the key here. Like, this is something that really humbles you because you can't do it by yourself. Like, Sarah mentioned a lot about that, but it's something that is so, I keep saying humbling because it's just so true. Like, I feel
Yeah.
like it's so, um, it reminds you that you're human. And I think before that this happened, before my mania happened, and before the diagnosis came, like, I really thought I was superhuman. Like, I really thought I could just keep going and like keep
Yeah.
pushing and keep, like, trying to be invincible. And like, nobody's like that. Like, nobody can do it on their own. And so I feel like my advice is just like, who try to analyze who are those people that you can invest in and that will like invest back into you as well. Like, who are those peer relationships? Because I feel like prior to my diagnosis, I helped people a lot. Like, people came to me for advice all the time. People came to me for like, I'm going through this, and like, will you help me through this crisis? And I feel like you don't have to be a minister to be in that same like predicament of like, people are
Mm.
always taking from you.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like you allow that. It's a boundary issue. Like, you need to allow yourself to be free and to have those people that you could just be free with, and be yourself with, and that aren't trying to take from you, but they're also giving back to you. So just true peer friendships, I feel like, is me, and even mentorships are important, like people that you could look up to. But yeah, how do you make sure that you're not alienating yourself? Because I feel like that's a lot of what happens, like when the shame comes in,
Mm.
when it comes in of like, well, I should be stronger, everything that Sarah said earlier. Like, um yeah, like, how do you what are your tactics to push up against that, to make sure that you're getting help from other people? And I mean, we talked about therapy. I think therapy is so, so important when you have, like, I think it's important for anybody, but
Yeah.
I think it's extra important when you have like, when your brain is a little bit sick, which is all that this is. Like, it's brain
Yeah.
sickness. I don't know why when you call it mental health sickness, like, it becomes like this thing that, well, maybe you're just making it up. Maybe you're just looking into
Yeah.
it, and it's like, no, like, it's a real thing that people really deal with, and it's just a physiological thing for especially people with bipolar disorder. Like,
Right.
it's, yeah, like, I was reading in a book that it's something along the lines of like, most brains are able to like kind of pick themselves up after like intense emotion hit you, but when you have bipolar, you have like a broken thermostat. Like, it's hard for you to recover
Ah,
like intense emotions. And it's like,
that's good.
yeah, it's like an aha moment for me. Like, I feel like throughout my life I probably dealt with that, and it wasn't diagnosed. But yeah, there's a physiological reason for that, and that's why I take medication. That's why I'm also like, I'm encouraging like you. I think another part of my advice is like, don't be afraid of medication. Like,
Mm.
and it might take time to find like the right amount and the right one, but especially if you have bipolar disorder, don't be afraid of the medication, because my doctor also explained to me in that, like, if you had high blood pressure, you know, you take high blood pressure medicine so you can kind of avoid having the high blood pressure. And I
Yeah.
think with bipolar disorder, like, our main goal is to like take care of ourselves so that we're not we don't have another manic episode. That's kind of the goal. Like, Sarah, you mentioned that, like, that's something you definitely don't want to go through again.
Right.
Like, that's the reason why, even if you feel good, you're taking the medicine, is because you want to keep yourself like in a stable place.
Yep.
And so, yeah. And then I think one last piece of advice is really like self-care and taking care of your body. Like, that's something that I've learned throughout all this, is like, I didn't used to exercise. I didn't grow up being very athletic in general. I didn't play sports or anything. But I feel like now that I'm like, it's only twice a week that I exercise, and something like maybe like 20 minutes. But like, and I'd like to grow in that. But I feel like it's helped me like in the de-stressing portion of self-care, of like, okay, and another good thing is like it gets you out of your head for like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So take care of your body, I think, is another thing, through diet, through exercise. That's something that I've learned is a really important part, especially with bipolar disorder, but I'm sure it helps with other mental disorders as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Marilette, for joining me today, and I hope you guys tune in for more empowering episodes on Rough Edges. Thank you for listening to Rough Edges. Feel free to follow this podcast on Instagram at rough.edges.podcast or visit my blog at sarahifox.com. If you have any questions or further suggestions on how to make this podcast grow, you can email at rough.edges.podcast@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening and have a wonderful day.